let's kick a little real estate.
Okay.
How did you get, as people watching have learned?
Sure.
You're a musician, you're a songwriter, you have a huge amount of interest, and you have a tremendous amount of love and time for your family. How do you get involved investing in real estate?
I had come into some money. It was hilarious. I had $10,000 total, and I called a guy who said, there's a man that has made $80 million turn to $3 billion, and he's a legend of his. That was more of stocks and bonds and venture capital.
I was about to say, unfortunately, that's not me.
Not yet. and I said it was the first inkling that there was something to do if you had money that you needed to be smart about, and that there was available to you. And I was drawn to it because I was like, my dad had made some mistakes financially that I watched in real time as an adult.
That we can see in Sabotage, that we can hear in Sabotage.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but that is another podcast, actually. And so I watched some stuff happen. I was like, oh, okay. And then I think there was a slight anxiety or a feeling of responsibility to make sure I didn't feel those feelings that we had of this, just the like, oh, you just lost what we thought was secure. And that's fine. I mean, he's a smart guy. He also got himself in a jam that he didn't know what to do, and he wasn't brought through as a mentor. He's just kind of making it up. So to his defense, that's just, he wouldn't have done that second time around. But anyway, we get to a point, and but then I'm seeing that Daylight is doing well on the radio. My first song that had the Maroon 5 song that was doing well, and I was like, how much money am I gonna make? And I was getting quotes from people, and I was like, is that enough? Like, am I gonna? And I'm like doing the math, and I'm so I get to a point where I heard inklings that a friend of mine was had really good deals, and that everything that he did was really real, and that you actually got better returns than the average, diversified portfolio. So anyway, I was super curious. I felt like I was getting in on a secret because the only way I got the information out of this guy was he was very drunk. And I was in Toronto, and I said, hey, what are you doing?
By the way, I've never heard this story,
this is hysterical.
I'm like hearing this for the first time. I'm loving this.
What is the deal? And guy's out of his mind drunk, and he's going, and I feel like I'm extracting secret information from a drunk guy who wouldn't otherwise have told me. and he's going, well, what we're doing is got a multifamily is my favorite, and we're gonna get your money back in 3 to 5 years, and you keep it. And I was like, so what, 3 to 5? How? Like, and you refi? And what? Like some of these strategies, not all the same, of course. But so I was like, dang. So then I call his friend, and I said, I don't trust that this is true, but I got the information.
But yeah, like now I need to like
and the guy said, I know it sounds crazy, but everything he's saying is what's happened.
Well, what's wild about that is in a weird similarity, and how I'm coming up with a similarity there is crazy. But I as you know, and I think one of the things you like about me, I came up through property management.
Yes, I love that about you. It's true.
So when I was learning finance for the first time, when I was learning the finance part of the business, my first mentor was a South African guy who was living in Australia, and he was working for the same Australian company that I was working for. And he said to me, we got to buy properties and refi all the cash out of them immediately, and the return is infinite. And he made it sound so damn simple, Yeah. I was like, why isn't everyone doing this?
Yeah, exactly.
And he goes, I don't know. and I'm sitting there thinking like, so, that's my introduction to, and now I was lucky enough that because I had a basis in property management, I was like, okay, well that can't be everything. We gotta be skipping.
Gotta be more than this,
right?
Yeah.
But
it's so hard.
But it was maybe 2 cycles ago, valuations were so low, like older valuations of properties, what you could buy a property for was so low relative to how banks were valuing properties, which was way higher. That there was this, you know, you could, at that point, you could get in there, buy a property, do very little to it, and property management at that point was essentially meaningless.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because if all you have to do is buy a property and let the value skyrocket.
Yeah, I see.
Oh, what your property manager is worthless. You know, did they sign a couple leases today? Great, but it doesn't really matter, and that's why for the last probably 2 parts of the cycle, you could invest in multifamily with the worst property manager or no property manager or whatever, strike gold. And it made it look so easy. It made it look like all you have to do is get in, refinance or sell, get your money out, and you either have an infinite return or you're buying something new.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've always kind of tried, and I think it's hard because investors sometimes, when things are rougher in a quarter or in a year, there's still a mindset of
how it once was.
7 years ago, I wouldn't invest with you if you were struggling like this. But things change, and actually that's kind of what Vesta is better suited for, because we're all, and this was kind of covered on the last podcast episode with Ben, but because we're based in property management, that's where we can actually do something different. Because when it gets harder, then property management becomes key. How you're only able to unlock value by occupancy, by expense control, and you're constantly dealing with issues. I mean, look, you and I were laughing about that today when we were touring. Yeah, you were teasing Mirtha that.
I was trying to tease you, not the actual stat, but I realized it came off that way. I was like, oh man.
You know, I don't think you have to apologize for teasing.
That was so
anybody.
funny. Well, because there was a cigarette box that just probably been thrown, and it hadn't got cleaned up yet, and it's very clean and all that. But I remember I was taking a stab at Mark. I was like, Mark, what the heck is this?
It's so funny.
Apologize.
Have you ever seen Rashomon?
No.
The Akira Kurosawa film?
That sounded like Chinese to me. Is that legal?
Well, it's actually Japanese. But
Japanese.
It's a Japanese movie.
Well, I was close.
It's a Japanese film by a guy named Akira Kurosawa, and it's black and white. So I guess that dates it to whatever
40s,
right?
50s,
Is
feeling it?
Mario's saying
5.
Mario's correct. Mario's in the 50s now.
He's going 5.
5-0. The story of Rashomon is that there's a murder that happens on a passageway in medieval Japan.
Okay.
And there are 3 witnesses to the murder, but they all view it radically different. And so it's a great lesson that we can all experience the same thing, or we can all see the same thing and experience it so differently.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
But sometimes you converge. And that cigarette box was the convergence of 2 different experiences.
Well, I'm sure.
Because
Jeez.
Here was my experience. I was blown away. I only told them at 9 a.m. this morning that you and I were going to come. They did not have time to make the grounds look as beautiful as they looked. I mean, they looked, and I was even impressed.
Oh, gotcha.
I was walking through, and I'm like, holy shit.
Oh, that's
like,
nice.
It looks like they knew we were coming, but there's no way they did, because I texted at 9 o'clock this morning saying I'm bringing an investor by. We're going to come and see it.
Sure.
And then you see the cigarette box. And for me, it's like, it's this very humanizing moment where I remembered being a property manager myself, and I remember we used to try and dive in front of our bosses. If we were on a walk with our bosses and we saw one cigarette butt,
going.
You're like, oh, let me get that, like, and it's like, it was just such a proud experience for me with how clean it was. But then to walk on that cigarette box, and then to be joking about it with you.
Well, I felt bad. I picked it up myself. I couldn't handle them holding it when I had teased it, and then that was just too much for me.
Actually,
I was like, give me that box. I'll throw it away myself since I made this dumb joke. This is your job. You're doing a great job, and I'm teasing Mark. I'm not trying to tease them. I was trying to tease Mark because you're like, if you went to your wedding, you'd be like, he needs to be teased. Because he's going very well for him. So
Look, man,
I go, this guy needs a tease. He's too much of a boss now. I'm going to tease him.
I got to tell you something. I got employees, residents, investors, all to humble me.
Okay, guys, you don't need one more guy.
You know what? Let's take some. We'll take some positive.
Okay, I'll go backwards. Yeah, no, I need to. Yeah, I'll puff you up now.
So we digress, but you're getting the best drunk advice ever
in history.
I
feel like I'm extracting data that I'm not allowed to hear, and which felt, it does feel like that. It did feel like that, and then I get a deal which has nothing to do with what he said. It's for a hospital.
Yeah. You said multifamily. I'm getting a hospital.
I'm getting a hospital, so instead of a multifamily, and
like a rehab or like a full,
no, they were gonna they were gonna buy 3 buildings around a hospital, and then the hospital was gonna buy it from it. It was a whole thing. Ends up being my first investment, and in real estate, you're not supposed to lose money. You could like break even.
Yeah.
I lost money.
You lost money.
I lost less than half of my money. Returned to me, and I said, "Oh, is that the end of the distributions?" And they're like, "Yes." And I was like, "Wow, if I had waited for this to play out, I would never be friends with Mark because." But instead, I got excited and I invested in. He said, "Look, don't just do it." Before the hospital had failed, they said, "Why don't you get into multifamily, our bread and butter?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd like to do that, to just see what you guys do before I." Luckily, I put like no money into the hospital, so it was just my first immediate failure, and so it wasn't immediate. It took a long time, but it looked bad. Like within a year and a half, it was like, by the way, and I was like, by the way, I thought what's by the way? Yeah, I was like,
it's
okay.
Like, oh, I've been meaning to tell you.
It's not going well.
Your money, you have less of it now?
Because you met me. and so I get into the multi.
Can I just stop and say to any investors who are watching this?
Okay.
That is a conversation that I am 99.999% repeating sure we will never have to have.
So then get into the multifamily. What they actually did was is I don't know, is it identical, but it's similar to what you do. And they were doing this, really, B, C, A minus level buildings like in Virginia and whatnot. And I said, okay, I'll throw some money in there. And sure enough, it went well. Like they got me the refi within 3 to 5 years. And then they still haven't sold those.
Yep.
So I'm still getting distributions, and it's
all return on your investment.
Infinite return, like your buddy said. And so then I was like, oh, this is real. And that's what opened the door to like, who else is doing this? And that's when I met you. But so, man, if I had so I saw this as something I should do on the side. I have the retirement money that doesn't grow very much. It's 7 to 9%, and sometimes 12, and sometimes 2, and sometimes -20. What happened, guys? Oh, it averages out over 20 years. Yeah. Oh, okay. But so it's just doing its hobbling along thing. But we plan on whatever.
By the way,
3%.
So Vesta offers full benefits, right? And one thing that's never taken off is our 401k match, because we don't get enough of our employees putting money into the 401k, which I think is a mixture of reasons, right? I think inflation hurts, and so their actual dollars go less far, so they want their money rather than. I think also some people don't know it exists, and we've tried to do this year actually. We've tried to do a better job educating our employees about what we're offering and how it can really impact their future. But I think it was 2 years ago, there were all these reports coming out that 401ks were being wiped out. Some of the market instability.
Oh, yeah.
So I was talking to Ben, and I was like, well, we should send a message out. We've got good news and bad news. Bad news is we didn't have enough participation to do the 401k match this year. Good news, we didn't lose your money in the in the 401k wipeout. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yes. Great. And so I guess so. To me, I had called someone. This is good. I had called someone who was a old man of the East. He almost speaks British. But he's from Boston. He's a family member. And I said, "You've done a lot of deals. What what do you do on get these PDFs of these which you spend probably painstaking hours over?
Oh yeah.
But to me, it's like, what the heck is this? And he says, look, Sam, he's like, he knew I wasn't going to be an expert in real estate. So he said, all the deals are going to look good.
Yep.
They're never going to send you a deal that's bad looking on paper.
Yeah.
He said, so you're really only, because you're not going to be this guy.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, you're really just seeing who's behind this, who's managing who's this person. And that gave me some comfort. And then it became more of like a character. Am I discerning of people's character? Mm-hmm. And to me, to do that, what I would do is put little bits of money and see how they did it.
Right. I mean, I remember your first.
Yeah, it was like very small.
You said that to me. The first deal, you said, I'm only going to go in.
Like small.
Yeah.
And I'm still, I mean, that's another story. But so basically it's just like, it's like tiptoe into judging of characters. And who, like, to me, like, when things are going well, everyone's fine. Yeah. So really, I haven't had enough time to watch a cycle go where things are really, the headwinds are really in your face, and who's coming out alive.
By the way, I had a call this past week with a guy, and he was trying to get me excited about non-multifamily investments. Actually, oil and gas is what he was looking at. Mm-hmm. And he's new to the world of syndications. So he was telling me all the positive reasons, everything that can go right, all of the best, And so I said to him, I said, hey, look, I know that you've told me he's worked with his own money before, but he's now starting to work with, he's now starting to try to work with other people's money. Sure. And he said, I said, I'm going to teach you something. Is it nobody really wants to know what happens if a deal goes right. Here's what happens if a deal goes right. It's the line from The Wedding Singer.
Yeah, but I don't remember the line.
So, Adam Sandler he puts on a suit and he goes for a job interview, and he's like, and they're like, well, why do you want this job? And he goes, sir, I have a jar. It sits on top of my refrigerator that has money in it. I'd like it to have more money in it. That's where you come in. And so what happens when a deal goes right? There's a jar on your refrigerator that has money in it. There's more money in it, and everyone's happy at the end of the story.
Good for you.
I said, what investors really want to know is what's like worst case scenario. Like what happens, and it's hard sometimes to absolutely forecast what happens in, because it's not like we can foresee, a global pandemic. Sure. And how the world will change in the aftermath of the global pandemic. Or, I could make a political statement that I'm not going to make.
Don't make it then.
But we can't forecast, whatever the government has to do to keep the economy going during the pandemic. We can't forecast, and again, that's where the political statement comes in of like, could we forecast? Maybe, but we can't forecast what the ramifications of those financial policies are going to be on everyday human beings. And so so what you really start talking about is, and this is what I was educating him on, is what you really start talking about is, how does this investment go wrong? We're buying an apartment. We're buying Woodland Oaks. How is it possible? And I'm not saying go wrong as in a 5 IRR, right? I'm saying, how is it possible? And that's what I ultimately tell investors is how this thing goes wrong is it makes less money than it should. God forbid it breaks even, but I think that would be a catastrophe. Mm-hmm. How this thing goes wrong is that we really aren't able to get, we bought it for $110,000 a door. We think it's easily worth, in a couple of years in a fire sale situation, it's easily worth more than that.
Can I speak to that? Because basically, I have a high standard of who I want to really hear advice from. I try to soak in the wisest people I can find, or even in readings and all that. And to hold someone as high as I'm about to say is not realistic which is a guy who's wanting to invest in real estate, who's managing real estate, and then I'm going to invest with. So what I want to hear from someone, and I think I've heard more from you than anyone, is that, hey, no chance I know the future. Here's what's happened in the past.
Yeah.
And here's what we do to stop that.
I was a history major in college, so that's easy.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like anything, like, do you know what's happened in the past? Crazy things have happened. So just so you, look, I said the reason I've even had people, friends of mine, when I referred you to them, or them to you, I've said I've never promised, because I want to hear that from people like you, that I go, look, this could go horrible, but it hasn't, and he seems like one of the ones to potentially trust.
I appreciate that.
But that's as high confidence I can do, because if I say more, I sound like a uneducated musician trying to act like a real estate expert, which is a joke. And so for me the only thing I can do is be as realistic as possible. I swear to you, my friends just calm down, and they go, either they're not interested or they'll say, I'd like to talk to your friend.
But by the way, what you just said it's the same for all of us, whether we're real estate professionals, whatever. My dad has had this saying for years, and it's become kind of a rallying cry in our family. He says, reality is your friend. And
that's a nice saying.
It wasn't nice when I was in high school, and
no,
the reality I was like, I just failed a test, or but he would say it. So when you were dealing with something you didn't want to do, that's when he would say it. Now it's become the truth when things are good too. Reality is your friend at all points in time. But people, when you say like, the advice you give people is it could go horribly wrong, or it could go well. It's the truest advice that any of us can give. I've been asked a question. I have a partner, a new investor that I'm very excited about. He and I are meshing well together early on.
Nice.
And but he did he wanted to do a deeper dive into us before he invested with us than almost any other LP I've ever met.
Besides me.
Besides you.
Well,
I will say this. I will give you this credit.
No deep dive.
He does not. Well, hold on though. Hold on. He does not know my heart like you do.
Okay. Well, I'm still.
There we go. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you.
But he was meticulous in a way that I couldn't have imagined.
Ooh.
And we ultimately ended up signing a side agreement. Now, when I've said this to people and told people that I had this new big investor, we signed a side agreement, most people get upset. Because they think if I signed a side agreement, it's a financial side agreement. Mm-hmm. Like he gets better returns than you.
Sure.
That's not what it was. Mm-hmm. He identified, and he asked me the question. I gave him the honest answer. He said, "What's the biggest risk?" I said, "Me. I'm the biggest risk."
Smart.
And he said, "That's exactly the right." For him, he already knew the answer. Mm-hmm. He knew the answer because he's a math guy. Mm-hmm. He looked at the numbers on the deal that I was pitching, and he's like, "I can't see a way it goes wrong. I can't. But my risk is you."
Yep.
And
key man clause.
And so it's exactly right. So what our side agreement was to give him a little bit extra insight so that he could feel comfortable as he gets to know me, that I'm running things the right way. But as in the real estate world in particular, and maybe in the world outside, we're too scared to say the truth. We are the risk. If you give me your money, what's your biggest risk? Me.
Plane crash.
Well, not plane, but
car crash.
Car crash. I mean, right. I mean, any number of things. Or what if one of my investors.
Actually, that's what I say all the time. I actually say, look, this is the risk of investing with Mark, is that he might find he's in love with 7 other women and take off, and his wife, and he ruins his life, and he just wants to go. He might die. He might be amazing. He might be decide he's over it. He lost his hunger, and we didn't know that he did, and we didn't know to pull the money out. There's literally no idea. I go, the reason people like diversified portfolios is because there's 1,000 marks in there, and half, 2% of them go crazy, and the other ones hold it together. And that's why they do that safe 7%.
That by the way, that is exactly correct. I mean, that is the risk. So where people have to get comfortable in investing in real estate, and it's similar in life. And by the way, it's similar in picking a partner for the rest of your life.
It's a horrible risk.
Because think about the risk that our wives take.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Like, I'm giving you my life. What happens if you decide that you want to move to to Bora Bora and, you know, be an island person
Check
for the rest
out.
of your, right? Like, you know, and I can stand there and say, I promise you, that's not me. And they'll say,
We'll see. We'll
see.
I know.
20 years from now.
Oh, it's crazy.
We'll see.
It's
And I
crazy.
think it's the key is when you're happy with your life, when you're happy with your lot in life, whether you're creative, whether you're in finance, whether you're whatever, when you're happy or content, not necessarily happy, because it's an unrealistic,
more shallow, yeah.
Right, it's an unrealistic expectation. Yeah, look,
I definitely thought on
you've
that.
spent time living in Hollywood, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's the Hollywood idea that we're all gonna be happy. Fine, we're not all gonna be.
No chance.
We're not all gonna be.
Happy people
We're not
I
all
know.
gonna be Grace Kelly marrying the Prince of Monaco. I get it. Okay, fine.
Well, it doesn't work actually. That's another thing I want definitely worth mentioning.
That didn't work.
No, it doesn't. No, almost. Okay, fine. Let me say this real quick. I spent time with a lot of people, and I always ask the same question, and people get annoyed sometimes. But I did have an instance where I was talking to one of the biggest people in music, and we just me and him in an office, and he was a big high executive, and he had been responsible for major artists being from nothing to like Super Bowl, and he was working on other Super Bowl acts, and it was all that. So I said, okay, you know any happy artists? I go, not just happy. I meant like thriving. Like their family likes them, their kids talk to them, their fathers like them, their brothers like them, their sisters like them. They could work, like they're thriving. They're not just happy, and then if they are happy, let me know, but are they thriving? And he sits there and he starts saying kind of under his breath names you would definitely recognize. And he goes,
But they're questions, right? He's like,
this one, no.
Yeah, okay, so
no. He goes, no.
Hell no.
And he's like, no. And I was like, do you know any? And he's like, no. and I was like, okay. So then, just for music, and might be the same in real estate and stock market, anything, any of the giants of the industry, I just realized, oh my God, we are striving down here, to be these people. And none of them have figured this out. And these aren't dumb people.
Right.
You think John Lennon is dumb?
Yeah.
You're out of your mind. That guy is a genius. He wasn't a genius at everything. But he didn't figure out how to be happy. There's
Right.
no chance. That whole thing was not totally true. Go behind the curtain. These people are struggling. It's not. I don't blame them. I don't think they're like lesser people or anything. I just say that it's an impossible task, perhaps, to manage so much of that. Anyway, not to go into that, but the point I was wanting to make was that we are all striving for a thing that's never worked for anyone, ever. So now, what are we doing here, fellas? Straight to unhappiness,
Yeah.
and so that checked me because I also saw from my own experience these superstars, and watch how they weren't even close to the level of person my mentors were. Do you see? Anyway,
when I was living in Austin, I was at my Austin rabbi, and he and his wife were telling me the secret to their marriage, and it was shocking to me. The secret to their marriage was that he freely admits that she is not the prettiest woman in the world, and she freely admits he's not the smartest man in the world. And I was
that's
shocked.
kind of fun.
By the way, I was single as single gets. I was uncomfortable. Like I wanted to meet somebody. I wanted to have love in my life. I wanted romance. Sure. And I heard that. And I was like, that's the secret to your. And she said, or they both explained to me
so awesome.
that if he was with her because she was the prettiest woman he'd ever met, then what would happen if he were to go down the street and see a prettier woman? It would give him the license and I can move. I can go somewhere else. I can go there because I was with you because you were the prettiest girl.
Met someone else.
Now you're not. So sorry about it.
Yeah, great point.
And I realized that there was so much depth to that. So when we say like happy is the goal, it's not.
No, you're not even close.
It's content. If you're content with your reality, if reality is your friend, and you're content with that reality, and there are going to be hard days, there are going to be days that suck. I mean, look, I am a particularly positive person, and I love what I do for a living. I love my employees, even when I have employees that are directly unhappy with me.
And they don't pick up 5 times.
And they don't pick up Ben.
Ben.
I love what I do, and there are shit days, and there are days where it's like in one of our previous podcasts, I relived a moment with Miranda where we were closing on one of the last few deals before I met you, Waterford.
Dang it.
Yeah,
dang it.
Missed that one.
Put me in that one anyway.
We sold it in December.
I don't care. I'm in it.
I mean, I was so stressed during the close of that deal that I laid down on Miranda's office floor, and she was like, "You okay?" And I was like, "Nah."
Nope.
She's like, "Do you want to get up?"
No.
Nope, not really. And but being content in your life is about getting through those times and just enjoying the struggle, enjoying the battle, enjoying the hard times as much as you. And by the way, in Orthodox Judaism,
cut that up.
In Orthodox Judaism, there's a thing that goes around where if I ask you how you're doing, you say, "Thank God I'm doing great," right? That makes sense. You're thanking God that you're doing great, but you're actually supposed to thank God. If the answer was "I'm awful," you're supposed to say, "Thank God I'm awful."
I remember this conversation.
Yeah,
yep.
and I think that like, so when we talk about contentedness, and for investors to think of their sponsors as people, like, are you a person that sits through it? It's a marriage. You know, the investor sponsor relationship is essentially a marriage.
I mean, I have a major.
Let's go.
It's real quick. Because I tried to get to the basis of that contentment you're talking about. I'll try my best, but there's 2 aspects to it. I think if you the fabric of the universe, for just speed it up, logically I could deduce that not out of hippy dippy conclusions, but out of actual logical conclusions, that intimate knowing, love for within yourself, for yourself, and from an outside source is actually at the core of a possibility of being content. And let me explain. I'm sitting there, I'm looking at my son. He's 2 years old. The only thing you could say I was doing wrong was that he was so cute physically. So it's easy to love this cute child. But let's pretend that I wasn't so shallow. And I'm sitting there looking at my first son, who's just looking at bamboo, doing nothing special. He's not throwing a ball and reading a book at 2 and being super, "I'm proud of you, son." He's doing nothing. He's looking at bamboo like this, not even thinking about I don't know what he's doing. And it was a moment of pause, and I looked at him. I love him so much. Mm-hmm. I was absurdly, I gushing. I can't even get the kid close enough. Like, sometimes I'll squeeze him and I'll say, "This is as close as I can get," but I would get closer if there was a way. So that's all I got. Physically, spiritually, that's a question. And I just remember feeling this incredible love for, it's kind of over in waves as life comes in waves. And then I thought, well, shoot, does anything feel that for me? Like the same way. Like if I'm just on the couch wrapped up today watching Netflix doing nothing.
You're asking, does Joy feel that way about you?
No, I mean, I would love that. That's too much to ask. But I thought, oh man, in the spiritual, I'm just skipping ahead because we would have a big talk about it. But let's say this power that created all things loves what it creates, as is a logical thought. It's not a faith thought. It's actually a possibility. It's not like you don't have to actually believe that. That's actually a logical thing. Something initiated all things and likes what it initiated. Mm-hmm. It doesn't like what it didn't initiate. And so I would be one of the children of that very power that initiated all things. And why wouldn't it just adore me as I adore my son, and 10 times, 1,000 times, and infinite times? The amount of love that I might be available to me is so extraordinary that it makes me feel home in prison. It would make me feel home in a mansion, empty mansion. It would make me feel home on the way and in the plains, and when I'm in Germany, and when I'm in Italy, and when I'm in the wrong house.
And when you're in Oklahoma.
And when I'm in Oklahoma, I don't need to be anywhere to be home. and this is why contentment, my version of saying contentment, is that if I'm home in a bad day and a good day, a crap day, I don't know on the ultimate suffering, that's a tough one. But let's say as a general rule, if I always feel that there's a love within me from the outside in and inside out and all about, then there's a very then all of a sudden my peace goes through the roof. Now happiness comes and goes in waves, but peace and contentment has an option of being very deep.
Yep.
and consistent. And so I had a friend, a Maroon 5 guitar player, James Valentine. We had a 4-hour chat as I was driving from Oregon to California for my work, and he's very spiritual and all that. And he said, I was telling him all the spiritual highs where I felt so much love and I had all these great experiences. And he said, Sam, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But it sounds like those are the anchors of your life, these high points. He goes, I suggest those are fine, but a mature person in their spiritual journey would have a deep resonance of peace, and those would come and go.
So the anchors would be more mundane.
Yes.
And the highs and the lows and the special things that happen
are great.
But that's powerful.
Yes, I'm goosebumps thinking about. And there was a very gifted. There's a very gifted spiritual teacher who changed George Harrison's life and all that. I read his book, and there's this amazing instance where he was particularly gifted in the spiritual realm, and not as much in the physical, like doing chores and stuff. And he went to his master, and his master noticed he was really gifted at like having spiritual highs, let's say. And his master said, hey, why don't you come sweep the deck with me? So they come sweep the deck. And in no words needed, his master had passed on the message to him, which was, you can live in two worlds at the same time. You can do the mundane, you can do the sweeping, and you can live in the clouds. And the love and the peace is there. And I remember my wife was very sick, and I was very busy not doing the regular household chores, and she was getting more resentful about it. She got very sick in each pregnancy, and I would always have to adjust. And I was so used to just writing music and floating, making
still living in like 3 worlds
making
now.
the money, and all of a sudden I had to do like a tremendous amount of dishes, which sounds so pathetic now. And but I remember I had just read that, and I started doing the dishes, and I started floating off spiritually, like just feeling great, doing the most mundane task. It was a great lesson. I was like, you can do this. Like, it's not always so rosy, but there is such an availability to feel mostly good most of the time in mundane days, and most days are not bad.
Yep.
And there are bad days, and that becomes where you're really tested. And in fact, I look back like you do, and those days, like your dad said, and the reality is your friend, because as you suffer and you have lots of obstacles and impossible moments where you can't even imagine how you're going to get out of this, those are the moments that that make you a dependable husband and a dependable father and a dependable person to invest with, is because
I was about to say a dependable real estate sponsor. Yeah, there we go, baby.
But those suffering moments, I'm now getting somewhat older, realizing that those are the moments that I should be thankful for, and the peaceful high moments keep me in it, because it's like, it can't be all suffering,
right.
And so anyway, so I feel that's the big. And the big thing is to feel at home, and God within, and that's why you are.
That's the genesis of thanking God when things are bad. When you say thank God things are good, thank God things are bad, and it's exactly that. Sam, I gotta say, I don't know how anyone's gonna top this podcast session.
We didn't even begin.
Well, actually, that was what I was just about to say.
Yeah,
was you got to come back. We could do part 2.
Part 2 is gonna be crazy.
Part 2 is I mean we'll pick up. We'll go right back at it.
We could maybe even debate.
Ooh. We get like a topic out.
We're like, we slightly disagree on this one.
We'll get a third chair, and Mario will be the moderator.
Oh, there he is.
There's an idea.
No, it's such a blast.
Sam, I just want to thank you for coming out it was amazing that you came out.
Oh, this is so fun.
I'm so glad you're here. You're here on a great weekend. The festival.
What? I didn't even know this was happening.
The summer Vesta party that welcomes this. It's just way for us to get our employees together with their families and have a.
It's families too.
Families. Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to thank you so much for being here, for jumping on the podcast, for also just for being at my wedding, coming to hang out with me. I mean, it's the friendship. The friendship is more important than the partnership, but
sure.
I have this view of life, right? Whereas, while the friendship to me is more important than the partnership, it's all rooted in the fact that I don't screw up your money.
That's true. Well, that's the only thing I don't like. I mean, gosh, the only thing I don't like about this. Okay, so I think there wasn't money for 100,000 years or until Egypt or whatever,
yeah.
And then there was money.
And once it's there, it's never going away.
Yeah, it's never going away because it's a great communicator. It's like, here's how much I value you. It's not. I don't have a bear skin that you don't want for your apples that I don't want.
If you have a bear skin, I got a guy.
Okay, exactly. He's gonna want it if he's got a goat. The doctor doesn't like my apples, so he won't treat my daughter. You see what I'm saying? So money is a great thing in that communicated sense. So all I have is apples. I'm an apple farmer. He doesn't want them. Who's a doctor that likes apples? My daughter is puking. I need this medicine. So what I'm saying is that the only thing I don't like about money and friendships is that when you have to transcend the money because the money is really hard to navigate. It might be one of those things that's like people think, I have a healthy relationship with money. I think that might be impossible because it was never supposed to be here.
Right,
Maybe.
I will tell you this though. I think I can keep our friendship simple.
No, I'm just saying that you see what I'm saying.
I'm not planning on losing you your money, so I don't have to test you in that way to see if we're still friends if I lost your money. So there we go.
But the test would be, you lost my money and we're still friends.
We're still friends. Right.
That would be, that's when I knew the money didn't matter.
My parents are not, and this will be.
Can I drink this?
Probably. Oh, absolutely. This will be. My parents are not, unbelievably wealthy human beings, and they invest, and they've invested in a number of deals, and the first time I recognized that, I mean, I thought it was a gift. I was very happy that my mom trusted me and made that decision. Sure. But I was on a call with somebody. It was raising on my first deal, and he was kind of on the fence if he wanted to invest with me on my first deal. And the first deal was the hardest because everyone kept saying. A lot of feedback I was getting was, I don't want to be an investor in your first deal.
Yeah, of course.
I like what you're doing. I like who you hit me up later. And I'm like, if I don't get the first one off the ground, there's no later.
That's why you're a hero,
And so, so I was on the phone with this guy, and I mentioned, he said, well, are you close to your investors? And I said, well, not so much, but my mom's investing. He goes, oh, your mom's investing. I said, yeah. And he goes, how much? I said, well, my parents aren't, I didn't start this business with like a trust fund or whatever.
Sure.
My dad's a doctor and my mom's a lawyer. So they're investing money that's meaningful to them. And he said, that's all I had to know because I just really wanted to know that you can't go home for Thanksgiving if you screw this deal up.
Yeah. Smart.
And I was like, hey, and he invested.
Very nice.
So it's the same concept. We can blend friendship and family and investment.
Well, we should be able to.
And we can all keep it simple.
It's just hard for people.
It is. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but that actually makes me more grateful for the true nature of this friendship.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I hope it was fun for you.
Oh my gosh, a blast.
We've got to get you on your way to Kansas City.
Yeah, so, I don't know the schedule. You're my boss. You're my boss.
We're gonna figure that out.
Yeah. Okay.
Everyone, thank you for joining us on See Here's the Deal. I'm Mark Kulik, Sam Martin, and the one and only Mario Gibson behind the scenes today.
Boom, boom, boom.
We'll see you next time.